রিভার্বটা একটু কেটে দিন। রিভার্ব
Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahi Tejasvinabadhitamastu ma vidvishavahi. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om. So the topic today is the mother ideal in Hinduism, part 1. So at the very beginning, I just want to mention a few things about the text, an ancient Hindu scripture that I am going to refer to. In ancient India, especially during the Vedic times, the mother ideal was considered to be the most sublime, the highest ideal of womanhood. We can't say that it was a female-dominated society or anything, but in entire family structure, the most commanding figure was an affectionate mother or an affectionate grandmother. That's because the relationship between mother and her children has a spiritual aspect about it, and is a sense of sanctity and sacredness attached to the relationship between the mother and her children, in a way that may not be found in other human relationships. There are many reasons for it, and it is said that in ancient times, the instruction given to a student who is leaving the Vedic hermitage, going back to his home to start his life as an householder, playing different roles in society and family, the role of a husband, or in the context of women, the role of a wife or mother, brother, sister, and so on. The first and the most important instruction given to a student who has completed his Vedic studies was, and in Sanskrit word is called Matru Devo Bhava. Literally it means, let your mother be as honorable, as respectful as God himself or Goddess herself. This is the literal translation. So it is said by many Indologists and also scholars of Vedic traditions that the first actual convocation address, an address given to the student community who is leaving the university or college after the graduation, the first convocation address is found in Krishna Yajurveda. As you know, the most fundamental scriptures or the canons of Hindu tradition are the 4 Vedas, Rig Veda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, and Atharva Veda. Those of you are interested, you can listen in our Google. You can go to Google. I have given lectures with the title like Introduction to Rig Veda, Introduction to Yajurveda, Introduction to Samaveda, Introduction to Atharva Veda, as part of our Stanford students lecture series. So you can go to Google. Now this Vedic literature dates back to, at a very liberal interpretation, about 4th or 5th millennium BC, roughly about 7,000 years ago. Of the 4 Vedas that I mentioned, that you can listen to these lectures, as I mentioned, in the Google, which I gave to the Stanford University student series programs. Now, one of the Vedas, well, that is Yajurveda, has got two recensions, two versions. One is called Krishna Yajurveda, the other is called Shukla Yajurveda. Krishna doesn't, literally, if you go to the translation, you find black Yajurveda. Krishna actually literally means black, but in the context of Vedic grammar, it means somewhat disorganized. That's the real meaning. Which means the Krishna Yajurveda is somewhat disorganized. So many topics, so many subjects, dealing with the highest philosophy, social conventions, practices. There are also many great ideas about the conservation of nature. All that you find in the Yajurvedic tradition. Prithvi's the different hymns adjust to the sanctity and sacredness of the five elements which constitute the phenomenal world. In the Krishna Yajurveda, there is one Upanishad called the Taittiriya Upanishad. In that, there is a convocation address. It begins like this: Vedam anuchya acharya andevasina manishasti satyam vada dharmam chara satyana pravidevyam dharmana pravidevyam. The first part, which means after teaching the Vedas, the great Vedic teacher, the great sage, addresses the students and asks them to practice these values and virtues. You should speak truth and you should never deviate from truth. You should practice dharma, you should never deviate from dharma. All these are ethical moral values. In the second paragraph, there is a much more valuable, much more relevant, somewhat eternally relevant set of instructions. 4 instructions: Madhu Devo Bhava, Pitu Devo Bhava, Acharya Devo Bhava, Aditi Devo Bhava. That means you should respect your mother, your father, your teacher, and also your guest as much as you respect God Himself. This is the literal translation, somewhat. But you have to remember the first instruction, that the student leaving a university and going to his home to marry, to start his life as an householder, the first instruction is you should respect your mother. Why this is so very important? First of all, there is a biological, physical aspect. You are part of your mother. Secondly, the obligations to your father, to your teacher, and to all others can be given back. But your obligation to your mother can never be fully repaid. So, this is a spiritual aspect about it. In fact, this idea is discussed so many times in so many scriptures. But I am now going to deal with one important text which portrays the life and values of family life that prevailed in ancient India. My purpose is to show how they are so relevant to our own times and in our own society. If you read newspapers, if you read the reports of the American psychiatric associations, medical associations, you will get some very shocking reports. Almost 3/4 of American population, those especially youngsters between 9th year and 21st year, have consulted a psychiatrist twice. A bigger percentage must have consulted a psychiatrist at least once. So you can imagine what happens in a society where parents don't want their children to be with them, and children want to be as far away from their parents as possible. One of the most shocking conversations that I ever had after coming to this country was just about 10 years ago, about 11 years ago. I have read a lot about, I have some academic acquaintance with Western culture, Western literature, Western philosophy. But that's not enough to really understand to understand what it is really like. So one professor, an American professor, who came into a long conversation, he said, his friend once made a very interesting observation. This professor was visiting his friend, and his friend was telling him, well, next month I will have one vacant room in my home because my son is turning 18. Because the room in which the son is staying now will be available for anyone to rent. Now, this was almost incomprehensible, intellectually unimaginable for anyone coming from an Oriental civilization. I don't mean to say that everything is wonderful in the East and everything is bad in the West, not at all. But there are certain higher values, especially related to the concept of the institution of family, that are very relevant for modern Western culture to imbibe. Things are, of course, the barriers, the lines of demarcations have disappeared completely. The world has become one. That's true. But still, if you look at some of these ancient scriptures, you'll be surprised how relevant some of these values are to our own times. Well, one interesting verse, Upadhyayan Deshacharya Acharyanam Shatampida Sahasram cha Pitrunmada Gauravena Adirichyade. It's an interesting verse. It's called Manusmriti. Now, this Smriti is something like a constitution. There are altogether 18 such books written in ancient times. They are not necessarily book of injunctions. So in that respect, they cannot be strictly called constitutions. There are the records of some customs and practices prevalent in those ancient times. Many of these instructions are not coming as injunctions, as with a constitutional or legal binding effect. It's not mandatory, but some of the ideas, some of the practices prevailing in an ancient society, let's imagine. That's what we find here. The literal meaning is this. So 3-4 types of human relations are portrayed here. Upadhyaya is a person, maybe almost like a guest lecturer who comes to a college or a university to give a lecture on a specified subject. Acharya is someone like a professor who has taken the responsibility to teach an entire subject. And then father, and finally mother. These 4 human relations are described here. So the verse tells you that the respect you should give to a professor is 10 times the respect and obligation that you should give to a guest lecturer. But the respect that you should give to a father is 100 times the respect that you should give to a professor. And then, Sahasrena adhigam tu pitrun mata gauravena adirichade. Now, the respect and the reverence you should give to your mother is 1,000 times as much as the respect that you give to your father. Gauravena adirichade means it's an ascending order of increasing respect and reverence and a sense of obligation, and also proportionately a sense of sanctity and sacredness. Now, why is mother so very important? So many of our ancient statements will tell you that there may be a nasty, ungrateful son or daughter, but there can never be a mother who is not affectionate to her children. There could be exceptions in these difficult times, but this is the ancient ideal. There could be sons and daughters who may not be ideal human beings with regard to their sense of obligation and respect to their mother. But there can never be a mother, you cannot even imagine or conceive of a mother who is not affectionate to her children. That's why in Hindu pantheon, in the Vedic literature, there are many goddesses or goddess figures. Many of the deities you find in many of the Area temple, if you go to Shiva Vishnu temple, you find number of deities, female deities, Durga, Lakshmi, and so on. Well, some of you may imagine these are all just wooden or maybe metal statues. They are not statues. They represent an ideal to be practiced in our everyday life. So all these deities are different aspects of matter. For example, Saraswati. If you go to any book, you find Saraswati is the goddess of learning. Why is Saraswati the goddess of learning? The ideal behind this, Saraswati is one aspect of refined intellect and wisdom. It's called Metha. So there is of course a ancient Vedic sukta, it's called Metha Sukta, Medha Devi, Jushamana, Naga, etc. It begins like that. So I don't have time to chant the long hymns. What it means is, Metha is the aspect of refined wisdom. Suppose you have got a PhD from the most elite university in the world. You are equal to an Einstein in physics. Or you are maybe the richest man in this world with a high-profile degree in finance and marketing and investment. But you are not happy in your own heart, and your children, your parents, your neighbors are not happy with you. That's because there is something wanting in your educational system. You may have a PhD, you may be what we call that very unpleasant word that has become very common, smart. In the word smart has got a very nasty, unpleasant, totally inhuman connotation about it. It also means a successful, a good person. It could be both. But the word smartness or smart can have a very utilitarian, very bohemian, very unspiritual connotation sometimes. Somehow achieve our goal, succeed, make money, and then finally become a victim of your own health, victim of your own wealth. You are imprisoned by your own prosperity. You are a prisoner of your own prosperity, you are a slave of your own prosperity, living miserable life. It's all because this Metha aspect is wanting. What is Metha? Metha is refined wisdom, refined intellect. When our emotions and feelings get spiritually sublimated and refined, so that we'll be able to make proper use of what we learn, what skills we acquire, and also we develop a sense of discerning wisdom. You may call it sense of discrimination, discerning wisdom that prevents us automatically from doing anything that is harmful to us, from doing anything that is harmful to others. So that restraining aspect, the higher wisdom that refines our emotions and feelings, that gives us the psychological and spiritual health to enjoy the fruits of our own labor, that is called Metha. This Metha is elevated to a goddess, Saraswati. So imagine. So the Saraswati has different names, Savitri, Gayatri, and so on. All these are different ways of invoking this wisdom in our hearts. So when you see a deity of a female deity in a Hindu temple, don't ever imagine the Hindus are worshipping this structure of mud or clay or metal. They're actually, many of them don't understand that's another part of it. The real meaning is, when you look at the icon, the picture, the image, and when you meditate on it, you yourself instinctively develop this higher wisdom in your hearts. And the higher wisdom helps us in our everyday life. Now, the highest and most sublime aspect of the spiritual evolution is the concept of a universal mother. Not necessarily a mother who gives birth to children, but the mother ideal that lives in your heart in the form of this wisdom. A spiritual wisdom, a spiritual level-headedness, called spiritual common sense. That is the importance of the mother ideal. So that's why when we develop this family relationship, when we evolve it to a higher and spiritual concept, then naturally it becomes our guide, our friend and philosopher. That's why the ancient Vedic lawgivers told us that we should respect mother more than anybody else, anything else. Now, this is actually possible when a mother evolves herself. So, this modern feminist trends, where every woman wants to be like a man, act like a man, talk like a man, that's not the ideal here. Actually, a man can never be the equal of a woman if the woman becomes the ideal of a universal mother. That is the reason why, in fact, that many of these verses have commentaries written in Sanskrit, which explain why this mother ideal is elevated to the level of a deity. That's an important thing. Deity means our God idea is the essence of all these higher spiritual concepts. And this concept of mother as the giver of wisdom. See, for example, look at the Holy Mother's name. Everyone knows. You find, if in English books, you find Holy Mother named Sharada is spelt in two different ways. One is Sarada. That is called Sarada. The other spelling is Sharada. That is called Sharada. It's an interesting example. This is a great name in Sanskrit language, implying a female person. Sarada means, in Sanskrit called Saram Dadadi Iti Sarada, means a deity or mother who gives you the essence of spiritual wisdom. That's one meaning. And Sharatkale Pujita Iti Sharada, the mother ideal who is worshipped in autumnal season. It is called Sharada. S-H-A. Now, these two ideals also come from ancient Vedic literature. So, mother is the one who gives you the highest wisdom. Because the first phase, the first human touch, the first human interaction that happens to a child is with his own or with her own mother. So, mother is the first teacher. And mother is the most revered person. Because whatever wisdom we get during the early part of life comes from mother. That's why there is a very famous verse here, which I shall try to explain this idea behind. Madhuragre adhijananam ditiyam maunjibandhane tridiyam yajnadikshayam dijasya sudichodana. In ancient Vedic tradition, two types of birth symbolically are explained. You are born in so many different ways. The first birth is the biological birth. The second birth is when you are taught the alphabet in the ancient Vedic tradition called Upanayana, means you are formally initiated to the study of the Vedas. Vedas here means study into the world of wisdom and knowledge. And the third birth is when you take a vow to practice the principles of dharma. I mentioned earlier that respecting mother, father, guest and teacher, and doing our obligations and duties to society, country and nation. This vow. So 3 types of birth are mentioned here. The first one is the biological birth. So the first birth happens from mother. The second birth comes from your association from a teacher. And the third birth comes from the instruction that you receive from your teacher on how to live an ideal life in this world. So these are some of the higher wisdom that you find here. So this mother ideal is interpreted in so many different ways. One verse tells you, Mata Pitrubhyam Jamir Bhid Bhada Putrena Bharya Duhida Dasavargena Vivadam Nasamachare. An important instruction is, one should never be argumentative with mother. So a number of versions are mentioned here. People whom we must respect in our interaction. But there also it is mentioned here that mother is the one person with whom you should never have any kind of arguments. This mother ideal is extended to not just one generation, to different generations. For example, in the ancient Hindu after death ceremonies, they are supposed to offer a kind of ceremonial food offering to departed souls. Perhaps all of us are familiar that in Hindu tradition, the body is not buried, rather it is burned, it is cremated, that means it's burned. That's because it's just totally opposite to what was prevailing in ancient Egyptian civilization. Because in Egyptian civilization, for example, this body continues to live even after death. And also, the body should be preserved properly. So the idea that the body is made of 5 elements and they by nature should go back to 5 elements, as happens when you burn the body, that was absent in the ancient Egyptian civilization. Though they believed in some kind of an idea of a reincarnation and a karma doctrine, there were some interesting contradictions. And one of the main conflicting idea was that the body always remained same. The body should be preserved. The physical body should be preserved. In ancient Hindu tradition, the opposite was the idea. This body comes from 5 elements. And therefore, it should go back to 5 elements. So that's why the concept of, you may have seen the concept of wearing ashes on the forehead. And also among the monks wearing this kind of Garua clothes. These are all symbolic of certain ancient concepts we are going to discuss here. The ochre cloth it resembles burning flame, a burning fire. And the ashes also reminds us of the fact that one day everything in this world will go back to ashes. Death is not something scary. Death is only a transition point. It's only a comma, not the end of a sentence, not a full stop. It's only a comma. So the idea that something in this body remains intact is eternal, which can never die when the body disappears. That idea was central to all these concepts. So we have to remember that these ideas can be properly understood only if we keep in mind these 2 important doctrines of ancient Hindu religion, Hindu philosophy. One is the idea that whatever we do in this world will produce a result, and that result is not limited to this life. It will be spread over a number of life cycles. And what we experience today in this life with this body is in some way connected and linked to what we did or what we practiced in our previous life cycles. It's called doctrine of karma. The other doctrine of rebirth. That is, this is of course common not only in Hinduism but also in Buddhism, in Jainism, in all religious traditions which had their birth in Asian continent, had this idea of reincarnation or rebirth, especially religious traditions which had their origin in Indian subcontinent, Buddhism, Jainism, Hinduism, and so on. So the point is, when we see this color or when we wear these ashes, we should remember all the wealth, all the power, all the youth, everything will one day disappear. Now, this is not a news to anyone. Every child, every doctor understands. If you ask a cremation, a person taking care of a cremation, maybe crematorium, he knows that. You don't have to teach him. But that understanding doesn't translate into wisdom or common sense in our life. So the man taking care of the crematorium also cannot get out of the feeling that this body is the wrong impression, the wrong feeling that this body is eternal. That's why when we fall sick, we feel shattered. When somebody dies, even when he's 100 years old, we feel it's a great shock. No need. So the point is, the idea that everything in this world is impermanent. It actually is a source of great relief and common sense. It doesn't mean that we should be pessimistic, we should be cynical, that we should always focus on the negative or the unpleasant part of life. Not at all. What it means is, it is a healing, it gives a healing touch. It helps us from being devastated when something unpleasant happens. We should take care of our health, our youth, everything. That's perfectly okay. That's very, very important. But at the same time, we should remember that this cannot go on till eternity. One day, this body also will come to an end. Everyone knows this, as I mentioned. But this intellectual conviction doesn't often translate into actual common sense. It doesn't percolate the emotional system. So that's why it is mentioned here, when people die, when our ancestors die, there is a ceremony after death ceremony. Ceremony is based on this. The body is gone, but the soul lives somewhere. Now, as a result of, as part of this belief system, they offer something as a token of respect and reverence to departed souls. So, in this context, there's a very interesting verse which comes again from Manusmriti. It says, Madhu prathamada pindam nirvapet putriga sutaha tidiyam tu pidustasya trudiyam tat piduh. What it means is, when a person performs the after-death ceremony in the name of his departed souls, he should give first importance to his mother. So it is ceremonially, you just offer some cooked rice. That's the ancient practice. It could be anything depending upon the geographical region, the cult, what is available in certain regions. But just a way of remembering or reminding ourselves of our indebtedness to the departed souls. So the first offering should be given to one's own mother. The second offering should be given to mother's mother, grandmother. Not father's mother, but mother's mother. The third offering should be given to the maternal grandmother's grandmother. It goes on like that. It's very interesting. That's because that again emphasizes the idea, the mother ideal is the supreme concept of human relationship in a family structure. This is very important. It's a very interesting aspect of the ancient Aryan Vedic culture, that the mother ideal is the most sublime and the most important. There are many verses in Mahabharata and other scriptures which will tell you that behind every great man, there is either a great austere mother, a pious austere mother and her blessings, or a great chaste wife. Behind every great man's success, there is the blessing of a great mother, and also there is the partnership of a great wife, chaste wife. These are some of the verses. I can give this example. Of course, this Vedanta philosophy that we are discussing right now was brought to this country by Swami Vivekananda. In 1893, he came for attending Parliament of Religion. I don't have to go to details about it. Everyone knows. This Vivekananda, after becoming a world-renowned preacher of Vedanta and Hinduism, still remembered his indebtedness to his own mother. He never forgot that his own mother, who lost her husband when Vivekananda was just about 18, 19 years. His mother became a widow, and the family, which was traditionally affluent, became very poor. So his mother had to struggle hard to take care of Swami Vivekananda, who was the eldest son, and his other siblings, his sisters and brothers. So after becoming a well-known preacher of Vedanta, after giving foundation to Ramakrishna Mission, Swamiji went back to Calcutta, lived in Bellumbad, but still he remembered the days when his mother had to struggle to take care of the children, himself and also his other siblings, his sister, brother, and so on. And he took her for a pilgrimage and so on. Before Swami Vivekananda, of course, Swami Vivekananda's own Guru, Sri Ramakrishna, is another example. Though he was always immersed in spiritual experience, samadhi all the time. He could never think of anything worldly. Still, he always remembered his spiritual indebtedness to his mother. And again, another grand, unforgettable example you find in Shankaracharya. Shankaracharya was born in 788 AD and passed away in 820. There are 2-3 versions according to some historians. He was born in 778 AD and passed away after 32 years. He lived only for 32 years. He traveled all over Indian subcontinent 4 times. In 8th century, there were no roads. And he founded 10 monastic orders, one of which is Ramakrishna Mission's own monastic order, Puri tradition. 10 monastic orders. If you read Sister Niveda's estimate of Shankaracharya, he says, this is a greatness we can only appreciate from a distance, but can never understand. So he wrote the most profound philosophical works in Indian philosophy, wrote the most moving devotional poetry in Sanskrit, 68 of them, founded temples and monasteries all over India, and he engaged in philosophical debates with all the different philosophical schools of his time. This Shankaracharya, he also remembered his debt to his own mother. And, his own life is very interesting. His father passed away when he was only 3 years old. And he wanted to become a monk when he was 5 years old. His mother was shocked. She didn't give permission. But Shankaracharya decided, that time he was a little boy, Shankara decided he won't take to sannyas or monastic life without his mother's permission. So it so happened that he was caught by a crocodile and he shouted, and his mother was on the bank of the river, and he told his mother, if you give me permission, to become a monk, then I will escape death. Otherwise, this is the end. So mother gave permission. All right, I give you permission, blessings to become a monk. So Shankaracharya came. He uttered a mantra. The mantra implies from now onwards, I disconnected myself from all my relatives, all worldly obligations. That just what you call, and then from that moment onwards, he was living like a monk. And then, of course, he walked 1,300 miles, came to Indore, today's Madhya Pradesh, Oankareshwar, met his guru, and that is how his spiritual campaign began. This Shankara, at the last moment, remembered that he became a monk with the blessings of his mother, because his mother extracted from him a promise. You can become a monk, but when I am in my deathbed, you should return to me. I want to see you before I breathe my last. So after maybe about 27 years, 25 years, his mother was approaching the end of her life. She was about to breathe her last. And he had an intuition that his mother was thinking about him. And he came back and he was there by his mother's deathbed. Now, I am sure, in fact, I've been told by many that sometimes people living far off places feel that they should go and meet their mother. Many Indians from here, I've seen this, they go back and want to see their mother. This, of course, this can happen in the context of their relationship with father also. But the maternal relationship has a spiritual aspect about it. It is a sense of sanctity and sacredness, which cannot be found in any other human relationship. That's why in this particular verse, Manu, the great lawgiver of Vedic times, tells us that Madhu Prathamada Pindam Nirvapet Putriga Sudaka Titiyam tu Pidustasya Trutiyam tat Pidu. What it means is, when you offer these offerings, when you give offerings to your departed souls, the first offering should go to your own mother, the second one to your mother's mother, third one to mother's mother's mother. So this is a journey backward through maternal tradition, not through paternal tradition. This doesn't mean that that the relationship with father's father was inferior or negligent, not at all. But the spiritual aspect that is associated with a person's mother, that is absent in the context of one's relationship with father, brother, anyone. That's the great lawgiver gives a very, very interesting, very, very famous verse which is often quoted. Even I tell you, some of these ideas have gone into Indian constitution. In fact, when Hindu code was formed in 18th century, interestingly, it was done by an Englishman, Lord Warren Hastings, who was the first Governor General of Bengal. You see, Bengal at that time was a huge chunk of India's territory, not just Bengal province alone. So he brought many pundits, and with their help, they formed what you call Hindu code, which became part of Indian constitution, especially some other Hindu code like Yajnavalkya Smriti, which gives elaborate descriptions of the principles of distribution of poverty, property succession, and so on. So, and that Hindu code later became part of the Indian constitution, not as such, but even now many great constitutional experts, to get more authenticity, they often quote some of these well-known verses. I mean, the human relations, the sanctity and sacredness of the institution of family, the sanctity and sacredness of the institution of marriage, and the sanctity and sacredness of the relationship between mother and her children. And then, of course, there is another very, very important verse which I would like to revert here. Mata Pidava Didyadam Yamadbhi putramapati sadrisham priti samyuktam sajñeyo titimasutaha. It is kind of interesting. It has something to do with the law of adoption. What's place is a mother or father who find that they are not financially able to support the children, can, with their blessings, can give their children, son or daughter, to another family who are well-disposed, well-mannered, reliable, and dependable to take care of their children. So this concept, it extends to so many other levels. That's the beauty of this great text. There are many other statements which tell you that one should always be proud of the spiritual inheritance that comes to a person through this maternal succession. So most of the great concepts of Godhead in ancient Hindu religion are related somehow or other to the feminine aspect of the feminine archetype. Durga, Medha, Saraswati are only just some of the examples. Also, we should remember, many of you have seen this Kali image. Recently, I got very unpleasant news somewhere in one of the politicians of Ukraine put up a photo of Mother Kali not in a very complimentary taste. And Indian government of India protested, so they apologized. So it may be very interesting for us to know. The picture of Kali is to be understood in its proper spiritual context. The whole image, the whole picture is a comprehensive aspect of spiritual life. On the one hand, you can see the mother in a ferocious mood when she's correcting her children who go out of the way, who deviate from the path of dharma. So there, the mother is uncompromising, because if a mother forgives her children, her erratic children, her children who may indulge in criminal or immoral activities, and if the mother doesn't punish those children, that mother is indirectly leading them in the wrong direction. So a mother's duty is not only to pour affection, mother's duty also includes correcting, if necessary, through punishment. So the Kali image is an interesting example, Kali or Durga image. There is the protection, blessings, wisdom, knowledge. At the same time, a most uncompromising message that if you do something wrong, if you do something harmful to others and to yourself, then you have to pay a price. So this twin aspect of mother's affection, the affection that she gives to her children so that her children should become ideal sons and daughters, citizens, human beings, and so on. Similarly, her children should not deviate from the path of dharma. Both these aspects combine in mother. So that should be very properly understood. So in the feminine archetype of Hinduism, there are these apparently contrasting images. The ferocious, the uncompromising aspect of Divine Mother, who is bent upon destroying the evil, just to protect the good people from misfortune. Similarly, pouring blessings on those who are following the path of dharma. These twin aspects you find in the feminine archetype of Hinduism. And that's actually the role of a mother. So if a mother doesn't correct her children, if her children go and fight with neighbors' children, or show arrogance or violent tendencies, those children will show the same tendency to herself when they grow up. It's an important thing. So it's a mother's duty not only to pour affection and protection to her children, but also to use maybe strong-handed methods to correct and to lead them through the path of dharma. So these two apparently contradictory aspects you find in Indian feminine archetype. They all come from Vedic traditions. So in fact, the essence of all these God concepts come from the Vedas. It is Shankaracharya who organized these various divine aspects that you find in the Vedic literature. For example, Indra, Mitra, Varuna, Agni, Rudra, Saraswati, all that. He organized them all under this Panchadevata Puja and Shanmadha, means Aditya, Ambigam, Vishnum, Gananatham, Maheshwaram, like that. Means, so you worship the light, the supreme wisdom, Surya, then Mother, Ambika. So actually the mother worship that we find today is a descendant of the ancient Vedic feminine concepts of the divine, defined. So then Vishnu, then Ganesha, Shiva, all these aspects of deities whom you find in today's Hindu temples were organized into this Panchadevata aspect, 5 aspects of the divine. The divine is one, but the divine, the absolute reality, the divinity, it manifests in 5 different ways in our life and in this world. In the form of activity, in the form of the Divine Mother, in the form of wisdom, in the form of protection, and so on. So all these are synthesized in the mother ideal. That's why the mother ideal is the most supreme concept of the divine Hindu tradition. Because it combines both. That's why Bhukti, Mukti, Surupini you find is in the Lalita Sahasranama. So mother gives you what you need. Bhukti actually means maybe worldly enjoyments, wealth, job, prosperity, and so on. And also spiritual wisdom and salvation. So both are provided by mother. Mother gives you protection, at the same time material prosperity, and also the wisdom, the spiritual common sense that teaches us how to make proper use of prosperity. Let's say science and technology can give us power, knowledge, information, the ability to conquer nature, the ability to make use of natural forces for our own good. But science and technology cannot give us the wisdom that will prevent us from misusing the gifts of science and technology, the gifts of nature. That wisdom comes from a higher source. And the mother ideal as a supreme divine archetype is the source of this higher wisdom, this higher spiritual common sense. That's the importance of the mother ideal in ancient Hinduism. So we will discuss this. If you have got anything to discuss, you are most welcome. During interaction, you can ask questions. Thank you. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Pranamastu. So I have some very important announcements. It's about next Sunday. So after the lecture, next Sunday, that is May 14th, we will have a Karma Yoga meeting in Swami Vivekananda Hall on preparing for our May retreat, which will be held at our retreat in Olima, Marin County, on Sunday, May 28, and Monday, Memorial Day, May 29. So as a background information, we used to hold this Memorial Day as a grand celebration extending over 5 days till the COVID pandemic struck us. So now we are trying to resume that Memorial Day retreat. So this year we are trying to resume on a small scale. Every year we used to put up a huge tent and it used to attract almost 1,000 people from different parts of this country. But this year, we are not going to hold it as a big event as we were doing during the pre-COVID times. So this year we are planning to do it on a small scale. It will be a 2-day event, 28th Sunday and 29th Monday, Memorial Day. On 28th, there will be a devotee session, and some of our devotees will give their own presentations on a very interesting subject. The subject topic is a survival kit for the spiritual journey. So when you go for hiking, you may have a kit or a bag full of drinking water and things like that. So what you should carry with you when you take on a spiritual journey? That's an interesting subject. 6 of our devotees will be giving their presentations. Now, as a preparation for this, we are going to hold a meeting that is next Sunday, May 14th. After the Sunday lecture, next Sunday, May 14th, we will have a Karma Yoga meeting in Vivekananda Hall in preparing for our May retreat, which will be held at a retreat in Ulima, Marin County, on Sunday, May 28, and Monday, Memorial Day, May 29. Information on the Monday retreat program will be emailed soon. If you are interested in attending this program and are not on the society's emails list of members and friends, please leave your name and email address with one of the ushers. We hope that you will be able to attend this meeting, and we will want to participate in the Karma Yoga as well as attend the May retreat programs. These requires a lot of preparations, a lot of voluntary effort from our devotees and volunteers. For that, we are going to hold a meeting on May 14, just after Sunday lecture. So there will be no question and answer next Sunday. We will have question and answer now. Q&A will be here right now. But next Sunday, May 14, there will be no Q&A. Instead, you can all assemble in Vivekananda Hall and join the discussion, and you can come forward to participate as volunteers. Then there is another announcement, special announcement. So information on the May retreat program will be emailed soon. If you are interested in attending this program and are not on the society's email list of members and friends, you can just give your name and email address to one of our ushers. They will write down your email or contact details. Okay, thank you. So the subject for next Sunday is Buddha and Shankaracharya. This talk will be given by Swami Vedanta ji next Sunday, May 14th. On Sunday evenings, there is an online class at 6 p.m. The subject is the foundational text of Indian philosophy. The Zoom and YouTube links are available on our website homepage, as well as in the monthly email bulletin. This class is sponsored by the Stanford University Hindu Students Association. On Wednesday evenings, we have a space with meditation at 7:30 p.m. in this auditorium. On Friday evenings, there is a scripture class at the Old Temple at 7:30 p.m. Please use the auditorium entrance on Filbert Street. Every Friday, 7:30 p.m., there is a class on the Bhagavad Gita. The current text for study is the Bhagavad Gita. The class is also streamed. Your cooperation in wearing a mask is greatly appreciated. If you would like to make an offering, a collection plate will be available on the cart at the door as you exit. There is also a mounted offering box near the auditorium door in the foyer. You and your friends are cordially invited to attend all of our services. After the lecture, there will be a Q&A session in Vivekananda Hall, and all are welcome. So please remember, May Memorial day 28 Sunday and 29th Monday. As part of the preparations for this program, we will discuss and we need some volunteers. So there will be Karma Yoga. So a Karma Yoga meeting will be held next Sunday, May 14, in Vivekananda Hall, after the Sunday lecture. Thank you.